Hopefully today you'll learn something as well. You'll equally learn something and take with you, and you might equally be offended as well. So equal opportunity up here. So let's get started. So who is Mayorga? So to understand where we come from, you have to know who Martin Mayorga is, right? Martin Mayorga is an immigrant that was born in Guatemala and Nicaragua. He was born in Guatemala to parents of Nicaragüense and Peruvian descent. He lived in Costa Rica, and he also immigrated. So he spent a lot of time living throughout Latin America, seeing many different things. And when he moved to the U.S., he saw so many big differences between living in Latin America and living in the U.S. An abundance, overconsumption, excess amounts of stuff. And he always remembered where he grew up. He saw poverty. He saw people that didn't have enough money to eat, people that had to work all day, barely get enough sleep. So he saw these things also as he traveled back to Nicaragua. He saw that he needed to do something about it. He wanted to dedicate whatever he did in the future to make change in Latin American countries and for Latin American people. So he began importing coffee, green coffee, to the United States from Nicaragua with the esperanza, with the hope to sell that coffee and to sell it directly to roasters as well. So his intention wasn't to be a roaster. His intention was to be a direct trader for the people, from the people. So he started importing green coffee in 1985. Not many people wanted to buy that green coffee. If you weren't selling coffee out of New York from a trading house, nobody wanted to buy it, especially from a Latino. So he had to learn how to roast. He had to roast his coffee, not having the skills, not having the training to do it. He learned, he taught himself, like many of us do with a lot of things that we work in. We're very resilient people. And so in 1997, he started roasting this coffee to the point where he created relationships with not only Nicaraguan producers, but producers from other areas. And eventually, having probably one of the first specialty models of specialty shops that had the full bar and pour-overs and a stage for poetry and whatever, the typical coffee house. And by 2004, there was 12 shops. He wanted to refocus his energy, right? Because when you have a shop, a lot of things that you sell is milk, pastries, sandwiches, all great items as well. But that's not what the mission that he had forth to do. He wanted to create some actual change to sell more people's coffee. So from that point forward, he dedicated himself to growing the coffee side of things, growing the wholesale, growing direct to consumer. And right now, we operate facilities up to 50,000 square feet that are dedicated mostly to coffee, with some diverse products of chia and black beans as well, frijol negro. Our big focus at Mayorga, they're good specialty coffees from 82 to 84 points, roasted on all levels of the spectrum, from single origin to blends. We work with cooperatives directly and with small family farms that are then working to create cooperatives themselves. We focus on organic coffee because it is part of el medio ambiente. It's part of making a better environment. So our big focus is that. We also work with the coffees that a lot of people here seek out, and those are coffees that are between 85 and 89 points. We work with about 400,000 pounds of that type of coffee per year. But our big focus is to drive value for producers through 82 to 84 point coffee, but also presenting these beautiful coffees that they also produce on smaller scales. We also operate with a really really small net margin because our focus isn't to make an exuberant amount of money. We want to make sure the producers are paid fairly. And we also want to make sure that our consumers are receiving a fair price for the product as well. So, our focus isn't it's not to curate coffee. Our focus is to support vulnerable coffee farmers, and those coffee farmers are the ones that are producing those cups from 82 to 84. So there's nothing wrong with curating coffee. I think we exist in a world where there are many levels and facets to specialty coffee, and there's nothing wrong with curating coffee. The way we do it, we support the small farmers, but we also need to understand the differences between those markets. We exist in a world here that it's multiple markets, and there's nothing wrong with curating coffee, but there's a way to do it, and that's what I'm going to talk about as well later on in the presentation. All right, so when we think about Latin America, when we think about nuestros países, these are some of the headlines that you read in the U.S., not only in the U.S., but sometimes around the world, right? Let's just read through a couple here. Latin America makes little progress against corruption. Will Latin America overcome its persistent corruption? 7 most dangerous countries in Latin America in 2023, according to GPI data. So these are a lot of the things that are put out in the media to really downsize our countries and downsize our people, and this is part of our reality that we have to deal with. Nos hacen de menos. They make us feel less than, right? And I think in some cases, some of the people that are here today, their friends or their family said, "Oh man, you're going to El Salvador? You got to be careful. You got to be careful in El Salvador." So it's something that we need to overcome, right? But we need to understand this before we can change some of the models that we're working with. All right, so historically, most coffee-growing countries, they come from colonialism, right? Coffee was stolen from Africa and spread around the world, but it's all through the colonial system. We were never the owners of things, and people came to the lands, grew coffee, did things a certain way, and continue now to also tell us what to do. Oh, I need this processed a certain way. I need this fermented a certain way. Your coffee is not going to sell unless you do this to it. And I think it's really important to acknowledge our colonial past for all of our Latin American countries and all the coffee-growing countries around the world. Something else that's affected the coffee-growing countries is conflict, internal conflict, civil war. I know, especially here for El Salvador was the number 4 producer in the world of coffee, and the civil war really affected that growth and stagnated a lot of growth in the coffee industry here. Also, natural disasters. More recently, we had the natural disaster, the hurricane that happened, where it affected Guatemala, it affected parts of here, and also affected Honduras really badly as well, in a lot of coffee-growing communities where a lot of people lost their farms. And just the extractive agricultural business models that we have right now, you have to buy fertilizer from a certain company. It has to be this fertilizer for your coffee to grow correctly, and you can only buy it from this people. You can't get it cheaper or whatever the case is. You can't barter for it. So it's really a monopoly on things as well. And our coffee farms in Latin America, we get about 12.5 million coffee farms around the world. 95% of those are small coffee farmers with 5 hectares or less. 84% smaller than 2 hectares. And historically, these producers have had no market access, right? There's a lot of producers that are even here today that are asking, how can I get my coffee to market? I usually sell my coffee to an aggregator that aggregates cherry, and my name doesn't go on it. How do I change that? So those are things that have been around here for a long time. Middlemen, coyotes, exporters, Those are the things that people rely on to get their coffee to market, but it never has their name, it never has their sello de denominación, none of that, right? And one thing that leads everybody vulnerable to is lenders, right? Especially for small coffee farmers, you are expected to take a very high interest rate, almost to the point where you could lose your farm for the high interest rate that you get. So those are things that we definitely need to change. And then most companies, market, we do ethical sourcing. I can't tell you how many companies use ethical sourcing as their model. And there are companies that do ethical sourcing, don't get me wrong. But it's also a big buzzword that people use, right? Direct trade, another buzzword that people use. Is it direct trade if you're buying it off a trader and have no relationship with the farmer? I mean, those are things that we need to really ask ourselves internally. How am I best representing this coffee? Am I being real with this coffee? Am I having integrity presenting this coffee, right? Sustainability is a big one. Poverty alienation, which we're guilty of as well, where it's like, oh, we work with small impoverished producers. And that's something that we're shifting as well, as far as to not market poverty, because it's poverty porn. Nobody's like, oh yeah, I want to see this, whatever. And then also development. Oh, we're helping the farmers develop certain practices or certain things, and we're just buying one bag of geisha of 91 points from this farmer, but we helped them with that one bag. The negative impacts of this is that we oversimplify a 200-year-old system, and it's something that's been around for this long, and that's something that we need to change. We need to start having these conversations to create these changes. There's different types of farmers. There's different types of approaches to the industry as well. Many farmers grow coffees at different points. They do different processes, but some things that we need to start talking about as well with the people that are buying the coffee and selling the coffee are cost, right? What's your milling cost? What are you getting from fulano de tal? It's very important to start having these conversations and become more transparent between the people buying it and the people growing it and the people processing it, because more likely than not, someone's getting fucked in the middle, Focusing on high-price, high-point coffee, it gives preference to well-off producers that can invest their money and create really beautiful coffees, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like those coffees as well. I love to drink them. I love to cup them. And then there's also the ones that need the help a lot, and we need. ¿Verdad? Está bien. We'll talk without it. Hello? Just, okay. ¿Ve? ¿Qué le estoy diciendo? ¿Qué les digo? Más duro, okay. So, where was I? So yeah, these are stories that we need to acknowledge and need to be aware of. That it's just not one coffee industry. It's not just specialty, high point specialty coffee. Specialty begins at 80 and goes up, right? And there is a shift too that's happening. I'm seeing a lot of roasters that were only focusing on these high point coffees starting to shift because they're trying to stay alive as well, right? A lot of people are starting to roast blends. Blends are becoming a lot more popular. I'm not going to name any companies, but if you look at the U.S. specialty coffee industry, a lot more people are doing blends. They're starting to do dark roast because that's what the market is there, right? You have to understand your market to sell your coffee properly. Let's see. So yeah, basically, everybody believes that we're making that roasters, retailers, and consumers are making a positive impact. But really, what's happening is that we're alienating some of these small farmers as well. Sometimes we tend to provide a false sense of hope for some farmers that are like, you know what? These geishas are really good, pacamara, really good, pink bourbon, really good. You should start growing these coffees as well. They invest, take 3 years to grow it, and then the trend has moved to something else. And that's something that we need to begin to work better with coffee producers as well, is not go chasing after trends, but chasing relationships. So yeah, how do we reverse this? We reverse it by actually celebrating the people in the communities that we work with. We actually celebrate creating an actual relationship with the producers or with the people that are making these coffees. I know I've heard of a lot of stories where I have friends that are buying from a trader that have never talked to the actual producers that are growing these coffee. They rely on their pictures, on their media, on everything from the trader itself, and have never stepped foot in a coffee producing country. And those are things that we definitely need to change. I don't think that producers should be flying people out here and showing them farms. No, if we want to make an impact, the roasters, the baristas, they need to come here. They need to see what it's about. And that's how we're really going to start building that relationship and building that change. There's a real high complexity. There is an importance to the C market. C market provides financing, and I know a lot of people turn their nose on the C market. But when you're adding good differentials to things, it provides a way for producers to get financing as well. And especially another way we reverse this is by the roaster, whoever's buying the coffee, to pay directly the bank that's financing the producers. A lot of the times you could get producers a better interest rate on their coffee just by paying the bank directly with the first payment. So it's something that needs to be discussed. I'm not sure if it's something that's gate kept or whatever, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And understanding the different producers that are out there, right? There's many different facets of producers. You have indigenous producers, remote and impoverished producers. There's family farm producers, and then there's estate producers. All of them produce great coffee, but we need to understand the differences of the producers. Not everybody is a poor producer. Not everybody is a wealthy producer. Not everybody is producing 90-point coffees, right? And I think it's important that we give our consumers that information. A lot of the times, especially coffee, we focus on traceability and we focus on the story. Well, this is a story that we need to tell as well, right? All right, so Mayorga's commitment. So Mayorga is committed to focusing on communities, focusing on people. We encourage you as well who are in here to try to work on the same if you're not doing that already, right? We support cooperatives, organic farms, and also on family farms, helping other farms in the communities that they grow in to try to come together, maybe form a cooperative, maybe exchange information and practices to try to create these organic practices as well. So celebrating, we launched a publication as well called Orgullo Latino, and it celebrates our culture, our countries that we come from, our different stories, and our people as well. And also, we want to avoid language that reinforces the concept of poverty and exploitation in a favorable and beautiful language, right? We want to tell it like it is. We're not here to sugarcoat things. And our focus is primarily on 82 to 84 point coffee. We also, do the higher point coffees as well. But those are coffees that are all built with a relationship. And we encourage and to pursue scale as well. So our big goal is to focus on impact over ego. And one thing that I talked about earlier that I wanted to say that's not on this presentation is that for anybody that's curating coffee, that's awesome. I encourage you to if you're going to curate coffee, to build relationships with the people you're curating from so you could buy from them year after year. If you want a higher point coffee, you need to invest in their farms and you need to help them come to that point differential as well. I think that there's a lot of beautiful coffee in the world, but the big focus should be on relationships. I think you're able to market a relationship much better than, fulano is from this area and he grows coffee at this elevation, and you could really taste elevation in his coffee. That's bullshit. You can't taste elevation in the coffee. So, yeah, my name is Eduardo. I work for Mayorga Coffee. I hope that I was able to teach you something, and if you got offended, we could take it outside.